morning sickness hit me like a freight train at 7:15, right in the middle of explaining fractions to my third graders. I gripped the edge of my desk, forcing a smile as 23 pairs of innocent eyes stared at me expectantly. The fluorescent lights of Lincoln Elementary seemed impossibly bright, and the smell of cafeteria breakfast wafting through the ventilation system made my stomach churn violently. "Miss Thompson, are you okay?" Little Mia Chen asked, her voice filled with concern. I swallowed hard, tasting bile. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just give me 1 second." I practically ran to the bathroom, barely making it to the stall before losing what little I'd managed to eat that morning. As I leaned against the cold tile wall trying to catch my breath, reality crashed over me like an icy wave. This wasn't food poisoning. This wasn't stress. This was the third morning in a row I'd been sick, and deep down, I knew exactly what it meant. 3 months ago, I'd attended an education conference in downtown Chicago. I'd been celebrating my recent promotion to head of the elementary English department, enjoying a rare night of freedom from lesson plans and grading papers. The hotel bar had been elegant, filled with the soft murmur of conversation and the gentle tinkling of piano keys. That's where I met him. He'd been sitting alone at the bar, nursing an expensive-looking whiskey, his dark suit perfectly tailored, his presence commanding even in stillness. Our eyes met across the room, and something electric passed between us. He was older than me, maybe early 30s, with intense dark eyes that seemed to see right through me. His jaw was sharp, covered with a carefully maintained shadow of stubble, and when he smiled, it was dangerous and inviting all at once. We talked for hours. He told me his name was Dominic, but nothing more. No last name, no details about his work, nothing that would allow me to find him again. At the time, I thought it was romantic, mysterious. Now, it felt like a calculated move. The night we spent together was unlike anything I'd experienced before. Passionate, intense, consuming. In the morning, he was gone, leaving nothing but a note on hotel stationery. "You're extraordinary. Stay that way." No number, no way to contact him. I'd tried to find him, but Dominic was apparently a very common name in Chicago, and with no other information, it was hopeless. For weeks, I convinced myself it was fine. It had been one perfect night, a beautiful memory, nothing more. I threw myself into my work, into my students, into building the life I'd always wanted. I was 25, independent, and focused on my career. I didn't need a mysterious stranger complicating things. But now, staring at the pregnancy test I'd bought on my lunch break, watching the 2 pink lines materialize with cruel certainty, I realized my life was about to become infinitely more complicated. I was pregnant with a stranger's child. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I moved through my classes mechanically, teaching multiplication tables and reading comprehension while my mind raced. How was I going to do this alone? My parents had retired to Florida last year, and while we were close, the distance felt insurmountable right now. My friends were wonderful, but most of them were single and focused on their careers. None of them had children. I made it through the final bell and the usual chaos of dismissal, smiling and waving at parents while my heart pounded with anxiety. I needed to think, to plan, to figure out how to navigate this impossible situation. My apartment was a small 1-bedroom in Logan Square, nothing fancy but cozy and mine. I collapsed on my worn couch, the pregnancy test clutched in my hand like evidence of a crime. What was I going to do? Could I raise a child on a teacher's salary? Would I have to move back with my parents in Florida? The thought made me want to cry. I spent that evening researching everything I could about single motherhood, prenatal care, and budgeting for a baby. By midnight, I was exhausted and overwhelmed, but I'd made a decision. I was going to have this baby. I was going to figure it out somehow. I'd always wanted to be a mother, even if the circumstances weren't what I'd imagined. The next few weeks were a careful balance of teaching, doctor's appointments, and hiding my condition. I was only about 11 weeks along, so I wasn't showing yet, but the morning sickness was brutal. I became an expert at keeping crackers in my desk drawer, at making excuses to step out of the classroom, at masking my exhaustion with careful makeup and forced energy. My principal, Mrs. Henderson, a kind woman in her 60s who'd been teaching longer than I'd been alive, noticed something was off. She cornered me one afternoon after school, her sharp eyes studying me with concern. "Emma, dear, are you feeling all right? You've seemed a bit under the weather lately." I forced a bright smile. "Just a bit of a bug, Mrs. Henderson. Nothing to worry about." She didn't look convinced, but she nodded. "Well, if you need anything, you let me know. We take care of our own here at Lincoln." Her kindness nearly broke me. I wanted to tell her everything, to ask for help, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. I needed more time to process, to plan, to prepare for how my life was about to change. By the time I reached 13 weeks, I'd developed a system. I wore loose, flowing tops that disguised my slowly changing body. I scheduled my prenatal appointments for late afternoons when I could claim I had professional development or errands. I kept the pregnancy test hidden in the bottom of my purse, wrapped in a tissue, as if keeping it close somehow made the situation more real, more manageable. Then, everything changed on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday in October. I was in my classroom, preparing for the next day's lessons, when Mrs. Henderson called an emergency staff meeting. We all gathered in the library, confused and concerned. Mrs. Henderson stood at the front, her usual warm expression replaced with something more uncertain. "I have some news," she began. "As you all know, Lincoln Elementary is a public school, but our building has always been owned by the Morrison Education Foundation. Well, the foundation has sold the building. Our new landlord will be taking over next month." A murmur rippled through the staff. We'd all assumed the school district owned the building. This was news to everyone. "Who bought it?" asked James Chen, the 5th grade science teacher. Mrs. Henderson consulted her notes. "A private investment company called Greco Holdings. I'm told the representative will be visiting next week to introduce himself and assure us that nothing will change with our lease or operations." Greco. The name meant nothing to me at the time. It was just another faceless corporation, another entity in the complex web of Chicago real estate. I went back to my classroom and thought nothing more about it, but I should have. Because Greco Holdings wasn't just any investment company, and its owner was about to walk back into my life and turn everything upside down. The following Tuesday, I was helping my students with a reading exercise when the classroom door opened. I looked up, expecting Mrs. Henderson or maybe a parent, but instead found myself staring into a pair of dark, familiar eyes that had haunted my dreams for 3 months. Dominic. He stood in my doorway, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, his presence filling the space like a physical force. His eyes widened slightly when he saw me, the only indication of his surprise, but he recovered quickly, his expression smoothing into professional courtesy. Behind him stood Mrs. Henderson, beaming. "Miss Thompson, this is Mr. Greco, the new owner of our building. He's doing a tour of the school. I hope you don't mind the interruption." Mr. Greco, Dominic Greco. The man I'd spent one passionate night with was now my landlord. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. "Of course not," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the panic coursing through me. "We're always happy to welcome visitors." Dominic's eyes swept over my classroom, taking in the colorful posters, the students bent over their books, and finally, me. His gaze lingered for a moment too long, and I saw recognition, questions, and something else I couldn't quite name. "Beautiful classroom, Miss Thompson," he said, his voice as smooth and dangerous as I remembered. "Your students are lucky to have you. I nodded, unable to form words. Mrs. Henderson was saying something about enrollment numbers and test scores, but I couldn't focus. All I could think about was the pregnancy test hidden in my purse and the fact that the father of my child was standing 10 feet away, completely unaware that our one night together had consequences neither of us had anticipated. After what felt like an eternity, Mrs. Henderson led him away, but not before Dominic glanced back at me one more time, his expression unreadable. I made it through the rest of the day on autopilot, my mind racing. What were the odds? Chicago was a city of millions, and yet somehow the one man I'd been trying to forget had bought the building where I worked. I needed to think, to decide what to do. Should I tell him? Should I pretend we'd never met? Should I look for another job? That afternoon, as I was packing up my things, there was a knock on my classroom door. I turned, expecting a parent or colleague, and instead found Dominic standing there, alone this time, his hands in his pockets. "Emma," he said quietly, testing my name on his tongue. "It is Emma, right? Emma Thompson?" I nodded, my heart pounding. "And you're Dominic Greco?" "I am." He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "I never expected to see you again. When I saw you earlier, I thought I was imagining things." "You left," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "That morning. No number, no way to contact you. Just a note." His jaw tightened. "I had my reasons. I'm sure you did." I turned away, pretending to organize papers on my desk. I couldn't look at him. Not when my secret was growing inside me, not when everything felt so fragile and uncertain. I heard him move closer. "Emma, look at me." I did, reluctantly. Up close, I could see the fine lines around his eyes, the intensity of his gaze, the barely controlled energy that radiated from him. He was even more attractive than I remembered, which made everything so much harder. "That night meant something to me," he said quietly. "I don't do that. I don't meet women in hotel bars. I don't spend the night with strangers. But you were different." "Then why did you leave?" I asked, hating the vulnerability in my voice. "Because my life is complicated. Because I didn't want to drag you into things you shouldn't be part of." He reached out, almost touching my face, then pulled back. "But seeing you again, I can't pretend I don't want to know you better. Have dinner with me. Let me explain. I should have said no. I should have told him to leave, that I needed time, that everything was too messy. But part of me wanted answers. Part of me wanted to understand who this man was, what his world was like, before I decided whether to tell him about our child. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Dinner, but somewhere quiet. I don't want this to be complicated." He smiled, that dangerous, devastating smile. "I'll pick you up Friday at 7. And Emma, I promise no more disappearing." As he left, I sank into my chair, my hands trembling. I'd just agreed to have dinner with the father of my child, a man who owned buildings and wore suits that cost thousands of dollars, a man whose last name alone seemed to carry weight in this city. What had I gotten myself into? Friday arrived too quickly. I stood in front of my closet, trying on the 5th outfit, increasingly frustrated. Nothing fit quite right anymore. My body was changing in subtle ways that only I noticed. My breasts were fuller, my waist slightly thicker, my jeans uncomfortable. I finally settled on a black wrap dress that was forgiving enough to hide my evolving figure, paired with a cardigan and simple flats. I'd told myself this was just dinner, just a conversation with someone who'd briefly passed through my life. But as I applied mascara with shaking hands, I knew I was lying to myself. This was the father of my baby. Every decision I made from this point forward would affect not just me, but the tiny life growing inside me. Dominic arrived exactly at 7, driving a sleek black Mercedes that looked out of place on my modest street. He came to my door like a gentleman, dressed in dark jeans and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, somehow managing to look both casual and impossibly elegant. "You look beautiful," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made my chest tighten. "Thank you." I grabbed my purse, the one with the pregnancy test still hidden in the bottom, and followed him to the car. The restaurant he'd chosen was in River North, an intimate Italian place with dim lighting and private booths. The kind of place where people went when they didn't want to be overheard. We were shown to a corner table, and I couldn't help but notice how the staff treated Dominic with a mixture of respect and wariness, like he was someone important, someone to be careful around. Once we were seated and had ordered wine, I requested water instead, claiming I had a headache, earning a curious look from Dominic. The conversation began tentatively. "Tell me about yourself," he said, leaning back in his seat, his dark eyes studying me. "Beyond the fact that you're an incredible teacher who captures the attention of third graders and mysterious men in hotel bars." I laughed, despite my nervousness. "There's not much to tell. I grew up in Illinois, went to college here in Chicago, always wanted to teach. My parents retired to Florida last year. I have a cat named Fitzgerald because I'm a literature nerd. My life is pretty ordinary." "I doubt that." His voice was warm, inviting. "Nothing about you seems ordinary, Emma." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "What about you? What does the owner of Greco Holdings do when he's not touring elementary schools?" His expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "I manage investments, real estate mostly, some business ventures. It's not particularly exciting." But something in his tone suggested otherwise. The way he held himself, the deference of the restaurant staff, the expensive car, the perfectly tailored clothes, everything pointed to a world far more complex than simple real estate investments. "Why did you leave that morning?" I asked, unable to stop myself. "The truth, Dominic. You said your life was complicated. What does that mean?" He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing the stem of his wine glass. When he spoke, his voice was low, careful. "My family has been in Chicago for generations. We have expectations, responsibilities, the kind that don't leave much room for spontaneity or personal choices." "What kind of responsibilities?" "The kind that make relationships difficult." He met my eyes. "I left because I didn't want you caught up in my world. I thought I was protecting you." "From what?" Before he could answer, a man approached our table. He was older, maybe in his 50s, with graying hair and an expensive suit. He nodded respectfully to Dominic. "Mr. Greco, good to see you. I hope I'm not interrupting." "Roberto." Dominic's voice was cool, controlled. "I'm having dinner. We can talk later." The man's eyes flicked to me briefly, assessing, then back to Dominic. "Of course. My apologies." He walked away, but not before I caught the look of concern on his face. "Friend of yours?" I asked. "Business associate," Dominic said shortly. Then, as if realizing how that sounded, he softened. "I'm sorry. My work sometimes follows me places it shouldn't." The rest of dinner was more relaxed. We talked about books, movies, our childhoods. He told me about growing up in Chicago, about his father who'd built the family business, about the pressure to live up to a legacy he wasn't sure he wanted. I found myself relaxing, laughing at his dry humor, drawn to the way he listened like every word I said mattered. But underneath it all, my secret sat like a stone in my stomach. Several times I almost told him. The words were right there, ready to spill out. But something held me back. Fear, maybe. Or the sense that I still didn't fully understand who this man was. After dinner, he drove me home. The car was warm, intimate, filled with intention I remembered from our first night together. When we pulled up to my building, he turned to me, his expression serious. "I want to see you again, Emma. Not just once. I want to know you, to be part of your life, if you'll let me." My heart was pounding. Dominic, there's something. His phone rang, cutting me off. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor changed. His jaw tightened. His eyes went cold. "I need to take this. I'm sorry." He answered in rapid Italian, his voice sharp, commanding. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. Danger, urgency, authority. This was a different Dominic than the one who'd been charming me over dinner. This was someone harder, darker, powerful in ways that made my skin prickle with unease. When he hung up, he turned to me with an apologetic expression. "I have to go. There's a situation at one of my properties, but I'll call you tomorrow, okay?" I nodded, suddenly relieved to have more time before my confession. "Okay." He walked me to my door, and for a moment I thought he might kiss me. Instead, he touched my cheek gently, his thumb brushing my skin. "Thank you for tonight. It meant more than you know." Then he was gone, and I was alone with my secret and a growing sense that I'd just glimpsed something I wasn't supposed to see. The next day was Saturday, and I spent it researching. I typed Dominic Greco Chicago into my laptop and was immediately flooded with results. My stomach dropped as I read article after article. Greco Holdings wasn't just a real estate investment company. It was a massive enterprise with connections throughout Chicago, involved in everything from construction to hospitality to import-export businesses. And the Greco family wasn't just wealthy. They were powerful in ways that made my blood run cold. There were photos of Dominic at charity galas, business conferences, city council meetings, always impeccably dressed, always surrounded by men in expensive suits, always with that same carefully controlled expression. But it was the older articles that made my hands shake. 20 years ago, Dominic's father, Antonio Greco, had been investigated for racketeering and money laundering. The charges were eventually dropped due to lack of evidence, but the implication was clear. The Greco family had connections to organized crime, possibly still did, operating in the gray areas where legitimate business and illegal enterprise blurred together. I sat back, my hand instinctively going to my still flat stomach. I was carrying the child of a man who might be involved in the Mafia. The father of my baby lived in a world of danger and violence that I couldn't even begin to comprehend. What was I going to do? My phone rang, making me jump. Dominic's name flashed on the screen. I'd given him my number at the restaurant, and now I stared at it, paralyzed with indecision. Finally, I answered. "Emma." His voice was warm, relieved. "How are you?" "I'm fine," I said, trying to sound normal. "How was your emergency last night?" "Resolved. Nothing for you to worry about." There was a pause. I was thinking, maybe we could spend the day together tomorrow. I'd like to show you something. I should have said no. Every instinct was screaming at me to end this, to protect myself and my baby from whatever world Dominic inhabited. But I also needed answers. I needed to understand who he really was before I made any decisions about our child's future. "What did you want to show me?" "It's a surprise, but I promise, nothing dangerous. Just a part of my life I want to share with you. Will you trust me?" Trust. Such a loaded word. But I heard myself say, "Okay, tomorrow." Sunday morning, Dominic picked me up early. He was dressed casually again. Jeans, a dark sweater, leather jacket. He looked younger somehow, less like the powerful businessman and more like the man I'd met in that hotel bar. We drove out of the city, heading north toward the suburbs. I watched the urban landscape give way to tree-lined streets and elegant homes. Finally, we turned into a gated community, pulling up to a stunning property overlooking Lake Michigan. "What is this place?" I asked as we got out of the car. My grandmother's house, he said softly. She passed away 2 years ago. I come here when I need to think, to remember who I am beyond the business. The house was beautiful. A sprawling Victorian with wraparound porches and gardens that must have been spectacular in the summer. Inside, it was like stepping back in time. Antique furniture, family photos on every surface, the smell of old books and lavender. Dominic led me through the rooms, telling stories about his childhood. His grandmother, Nonna Maria, had been the heart of the family, the one who'd kept everyone grounded. She'd immigrated from Italy with nothing and built a life through sheer determination and love. She used to tell me that family was everything, Dominic said as we sat in the sunroom overlooking the lake. But she also said that family shouldn't be a prison, that we have to choose our own path, even if it means disappointing people. I looked at him, seeing the conflict in his eyes. Is that why you left that morning? Because of family expectations? He nodded slowly. My father wants me to take over the family business completely. All of it. Not just the legitimate parts. He has plans, visions for expanding our influence. But He trailed off, his jaw tightening. I want something different. I want to build something clean. Something I can be proud of. What do you mean by not just the legitimate parts? I asked, though I thought I already knew. Dominic met my eyes, and in that moment, I saw complete honesty. My family has a complicated history, Emma. My father, my grandfather, they did things I'm not proud of. They made deals with people who operate outside the law. And yes, there's money in our accounts that didn't come from legitimate sources. I've been trying to change that, to move us toward legal enterprises, but it's not easy. People have expectations, debts, obligations. My heart was pounding. Are you part of the Mafia, Dominic? He was quiet for a long moment. I'm part of a family that used to be. I'm trying to be part of a family that isn't anymore. But the past doesn't let go easily. There are people who still see us that way, who still expect certain things. I'm working to change our reputation, to make Greco Holdings a legitimate business empire. But it takes time. I stood up, suddenly needing space. I walked to the window, staring out at the gray waters of Lake Michigan. Everything in me was screaming to run, to get as far away from this man and his dangerous world as possible. But I also heard the sincerity in his voice, saw the conflict in his eyes. He was trying to change, to be better, and he deserved to know the truth. I turned to face him, my hand unconsciously moving to my stomach. Dominic, I need to tell you something. He stood, concern flickering across his face. What is it? Before I could speak, his phone rang again. He glanced at it and cursed under his breath. I'm sorry. I need to take this. It's urgent. He stepped out of the room, and I heard his voice rise in sharp Italian, anger and frustration clear even though I couldn't understand the words. When he came back, his face was pale, his expression grim. I need to take you home, now. There's been an incident at one of our warehouses. Someone was hurt. Is it serious? I asked, grabbing my purse. It could be. His voice was tight with controlled fury. Someone's sending a message, trying to provoke us into a response. The drive back to the city was tense and silent. I could feel the danger radiating from him, the barely contained violence that lurked beneath his civilized exterior. This was the world he lived in, a world of threats and retaliation, of messages sent through violence. When we reached my apartment, he walked me to the door, his eyes constantly scanning the street like he expected trouble. I'm sorry our day was cut short. I'll make it up to you. Dominic, be careful, I said, surprising myself with the depth of concern in my voice. He touched my face, his expression softening. I will. And Emma? Whatever you wanted to tell me, we'll talk soon. I promise. Then he was gone, and I was left standing in my doorway, watching his car disappear down the street, my secret still locked inside me. But I knew I couldn't wait much longer. Soon my body would betray my secret. Soon, the choice would be taken from me. I went inside and pulled the pregnancy test from my purse, staring at those 2 pink lines. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow I would tell him, no matter what. Our child deserved a father, and Dominic deserved to know the truth, regardless of how complicated his world was. I just hoped that when I finally found the courage to speak, it wouldn't be too late. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that usually made me feel energized and ready to face my students. Instead, I felt exhausted, anxious, and increasingly nauseous. I'd barely slept, running through countless scenarios of how to tell Dominic about the pregnancy. Every imagined conversation ended badly, with him angry, or worse, indifferent. I dressed carefully in loose layers, grabbed my oversized purse with its hidden secret, and headed to school. Lincoln Elementary was buzzing with its usual Monday energy, children running through the hallways, teachers clutching coffee cups like lifelines, the smell of crayons and cleaning products permeating everything. My morning classes went smoothly until recess, when the nausea hit again. I excused myself, telling my teaching assistant to watch the class, and hurried to the staff bathroom. As I splashed cold water on my face afterward, Mrs. Henderson found me. "Emma, dear, you really don't look well." Her voice was gentle, but firm. "Maybe you should go home for the day." "I'm fine, really. Just a stomach bug that won't quit." I forced a smile that felt more like a grimace. She studied me with those sharp, experienced eyes. "Emma, I've been teaching for 40 years. I've seen pregnant women try to hide morning sickness more times than I can count." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "If you need accommodations or want to talk about maternity leave planning, my door is always open." I felt tears prick my eyes. "How did you know?" "You've been eating crackers constantly, you've stopped drinking coffee, and you've developed a tendency to bolt from the room at odd times." She smiled kindly. "Plus, I'm a mother of 4. I recognize the signs. But don't worry. Your secret is safe with me until you're ready to share it." After she left, I stood in the bathroom, overwhelmed by gratitude and fear in equal measure. At least I had one ally who understood. But that made it even more urgent that I tell Dominic. He deserved to know before the whole world figured it out. I made it through the rest of the day by sheer willpower. When the final bell rang, I packed up my things quickly, planning to go straight home and call Dominic. I needed to arrange a meeting, somewhere private where we could talk without interruption. But as I walked toward the school's entrance, I saw his Mercedes parked outside. Dominic was leaning against it, looking out of place among the minivans and sedans of parent pickup. When he saw me, he straightened, and I noticed he looked tired, shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. "Hey," he said as I approached. "I hope it's okay that I came by. I wanted to apologize for how yesterday ended and see if you were free for dinner." "Actually, I was going to call you." I clutched my purse tighter, feeling the outline of the pregnancy test through the fabric. "We need to talk. There's something important I have to tell you." His expression became guarded. "That sounds serious." "It is." I glanced around at the parents and children streaming past us. "But not here. Can we go somewhere private?" "My car?" he suggested. I nodded, and we got in. The interior smelled like leather and his cologne, bringing back vivid memories of our night together. He started driving, heading toward the lakefront, neither of us speaking. The silence was heavy with anticipation. He parked in a quiet area overlooking the water, then turned to face me. "Emma, you're making me nervous. Whatever it is, just tell me." I took a deep breath, my hands shaking as I opened my purse. This was it. No more hiding, no more delays. That night we spent together, 3 months ago. It had consequences neither of us expected. I pulled out the pregnancy test, still wrapped in tissue, and handed it to him. He unwrapped it slowly, his expression unreadable as he stared at the 2 pink lines. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. "Is this child mine?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes." My own voice was trembling. "I found out a few weeks ago. I haven't been with anyone else. I was trying to figure out how to tell you, and then you showed up at my school, and everything got so complicated." "How far along are you?" He was still staring at the test, his knuckles white where he gripped it. 13 weeks, almost 14. I twisted my hands in my lap, unable to read his expression. "I understand if you're angry. I should have told you sooner, but I didn't know how to find you. And then when you reappeared, everything was so confusing." "Angry?" He finally looked up at me, and I was shocked to see tears in his eyes. "Emma, I'm not angry. I'm overwhelmed, scared, but not angry." He reached out and took my hand. "I'm going to be a father." The relief that washed over me was so intense it made me dizzy. "You're not upset?" "No. Terrified, yes. Worried about what this means for you and the baby, definitely. But upset? Never." He squeezed my hand. "Emma, that night meant something to me. I told you that. And now we've created a life together. That's incredible." I felt tears start to fall, and suddenly I was crying. All the stress and fear of the past weeks pouring out. Dominic pulled me against him, holding me as I sobbed into his shoulder, one hand stroking my hair. "It's okay," he murmured. "We're going to figure this out, together. I promise." After I'd calmed down, we sat together in the car, watching the lake and talking about the future. Dominic asked questions about my prenatal care, whether I needed anything, how I was feeling. His concern was genuine, touching, making me fall a little bit more for this complicated, dangerous man. "I want to be involved, Emma. Fully involved. Doctor's appointments, decisions, everything." His voice was intense, determined. "This is my child, too." "I want that," I said honestly. "But Dominic, your world is dangerous. Yesterday you got called away because someone was hurt. How can I bring a baby into that?" His jaw tightened. "I've been working to distance myself from the more problematic aspects of the family business. This just makes it more urgent. I'll do whatever it takes to keep you and our baby safe." "Can you promise that? Can you really get out?" "I can try." He turned to face me fully. "Emma, I need you to understand something. My father won't be happy about this. He has very specific ideas about who I should be with, how I should live my life. An elementary school teacher who's pregnant with his grandchild wasn't part of his plan." "What are you saying?" Fear crept into my voice. "I'm saying we need to be careful. We need to be smart about how we handle this." He paused, seeming to wrestle with his next words. "Would you consider moving? Just temporarily, somewhere safer until I can sort things out with my family? I can't just leave my job, my life. I know. I'm not asking you to. Just be aware that things might get complicated." He touched my face gently. "I will protect you and our baby. That's not negotiable. But I need you to trust me." Before I could respond, my purse, which I'd left on my lap, suddenly slipped and fell onto the car floor. Everything spilled out: wallet, keys, lip gloss, pens, and papers, including a folded copy of my first ultrasound picture that I'd been carrying around like a talisman. Dominic bent to help me gather everything, and his hand closed around the ultrasound image. He unfolded it slowly, staring at the grainy black and white image of our baby. His entire body went still. "This is..." His voice cracked. "Our baby," I said softly. 12 weeks in that picture. I have another appointment next week. You could come, if you want to." He looked up at me, and the raw emotion in his face took my breath away. This powerful, controlled man looked completely undone. I would like that. Very much. We stayed in the car for another hour, making plans, discussing logistics. Dominic insisted on giving me his personal number, making me promise to call him for anything, no matter how small. He wanted to know about my doctor, my insurance, whether I needed financial help. I can take care of myself, I said, a bit defensively. I know you can. But you shouldn't have to, not alone. His voice was gentle but firm. Let me help, Emma. Please. As the sun began to set, he drove me home. When we pulled up to my building, I noticed a dark SUV parked across the street, the windows tinted. Dominic saw it too, his entire body tensing. Stay in the car, he said quietly. Dominic, what? But he was already out, walking toward the SUV with purposeful strides. The driver's window rolled down, and I saw them talking, though I couldn't hear the words. Dominic's body language was aggressive, threatening, and whatever he said made the SUV pull away quickly. When he came back to the car, his expression was grim. Someone was watching your building. My blood ran cold. Who? I'm not sure yet. Could be business rivals. Could be someone trying to get leverage on me. Either way, I don't like it. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call in Italian, his voice sharp with commands. What are you doing? I asked, fighting panic. Arranging security. I'm going to have someone watching your building just to be safe. You can't just put guards on me without asking. Watch me. His voice was steel. Emma, someone was watching your home. That means they might know about you, about us. I will not take chances with your safety or our babies. Not negotiable. We argued about it for another 10 minutes, but he was immovable. Finally, exhausted and overwhelmed, I gave in. He walked me to my apartment, checking every corner, every shadow, before allowing me inside. Lock the door behind me, he ordered, and call me if anything seems off. Anything at all. I mean it, Emma. After he left, I did as he asked, then sank onto my couch, my hands shaking. What had I gotten myself into? One moment I was a normal teacher living a quiet life, and the next I was pregnant with a mob boss's baby, with mysterious people watching my building and security guards being assigned to protect me. I spent the evening alternating between panic and strange excitement. Despite everything, despite the danger and uncertainty, I couldn't deny the flutter in my chest when I remembered how Dominic had looked at that ultrasound, how he'd held me when I cried, how determined he was to be part of our baby's life. The next morning, I was getting ready for work when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Miss Thompson? A woman's voice, polite but cold. My name is Angela Greco. I'm Dominic's mother. I think we need to have a conversation about my son and your situation. My heart stopped. How did you get my number? That's not important. What's important is that we meet. Today, if possible. There are things you need to understand about my family before you make any decisions that might affect all of our futures. I don't think that's a good idea. I should talk to Dominic first. Dominic doesn't need to know about this conversation. Not yet. Her voice held a veiled threat. I'm trying to help you, Miss Thompson, but I can only do that if you cooperate. There's a cafe on Michigan Avenue, Cafe Bella. Meet me there at noon. Come alone. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone, my mind racing. Should I tell Dominic? Should I go? What did his mother want? I texted Dominic. Your mother called me. She wants to meet. His response was immediate. Do not meet with her. I'm serious, Emma. My mother is not who you think she is. Let me handle this. But my curiosity and concern won out over caution. Angela Greco knew about the pregnancy, which meant the family knew. And if I was going to navigate this world, I needed to understand the players. I needed to know what I was up against. At 11:30, I told Mrs. Henderson I had a doctor's appointment and left school. The cafe was elegant and quiet, the kind of place where wealthy women lunched while discussing charity galas and society gossip. I spotted Angela Greco immediately. She was in her early 60s, impeccably dressed in designer clothes, her dark hair perfectly styled, her posture radiating authority and old money. She saw me approach and gestured to the chair across from her. "Miss Thompson, thank you for coming. Please sit." I sat, my hands clutched in my lap. Up close, I could see the resemblance to Dominic. The same dark eyes, the same sharp intelligence, the same barely concealed intensity. "I'll get straight to the point," she said, stirring her espresso with precise movements. "You're pregnant with my son's child. Under normal circumstances, I would be thrilled to welcome you into our family. But circumstances are far from normal." "What do you mean?" Her eyes were sharp, assessing. "My son is trying to distance himself from certain aspects of our family business. He thinks he can just walk away, build something legitimate, pretend the past doesn't exist. But it's not that simple. We have obligations, enemies, debts that can't be paid with legitimate money. And now you've complicated everything by becoming pregnant. I didn't plan this. I know. But intentions don't matter. What matters is that you and your child are now targets. Anyone who wants to hurt my family, to get leverage over my son, will see you as the perfect opportunity. Do you understand what that means?" I felt cold all over. "Are you saying my baby is in danger?" "I'm saying you need to be realistic about what kind of life you're signing up for. This isn't a fairy tale, Miss Thompson. This is a world where people disappear, where children are used as pawns, where a simple trip to the grocery store could end in violence." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "I'm trying to protect you by warning you. Walk away now while you still can. Take some money, move somewhere quiet, raise your child in peace. Dominic will understand eventually." I stared at her, anger rising to replace my fear. "You want me to take money to disappear? To keep your grandchild from you?" "I want you to survive. I want my grandchild to survive. And the best way to do that is to not be connected to this family." Her expression softened slightly. "I'm not a monster, Miss Thompson. I'm a mother trying to protect her son and her future grandchild from a life I wouldn't wish on anyone. Does Dominic know you're saying this to me?" Dominic is in love with an illusion. The idea that he can have both worlds, that he can be part of this family and also live a normal life with you. But he can't. Eventually, he'll have to choose. And when he does, I need you to understand what that choice really means. Before I could respond, the door to the cafe opened and Dominic strode in, his face dark with fury. He spotted us immediately and came straight to our table. "Mother, what are you doing?" Angela smiled calmly. "Having a conversation with the mother of my grandchild. Is that not appropriate?" "Not when you're trying to scare her away." He looked at me, his expression softening. "Emma, are you okay?" I nodded, unable to speak. The tension between mother and son was palpable. Years of conflict and love and resentment swirling in the space between them. "I'm trying to help her see reality," Angela said, standing. "But I can see you're not ready to hear it. Fine. Do things your way, Dominic. But when this ends badly, and it will, don't say I didn't warn you both." She picked up her purse and walked out, leaving us in shocked silence. Dominic sank into the chair she'd vacated, running his hands through his hair. "I'm so sorry. I should have known she'd try something like this." "Is she right?" I asked quietly. "About the danger? About this being impossible?" "No, she's not." He took my hands, his grip fierce. "Emma, my mother has lived in fear her entire life. She's let that fear control her, make her cynical. But I'm not her. I won't let fear dictate my choices. I want you and our baby in my life, and I will do whatever it takes to make that safe. I wanted to believe him. But Angela's words echoed in my mind. Eventually he'll have to choose. And when he does, what choice would he make? And more importantly, what choice would I? The days following my meeting with Angela Greco became a strange blend of normalcy and surreal danger. I continued teaching, my students blissfully unaware that their beloved Miss Thompson was pregnant with the child of Chicago's most complicated family. But outside the classroom walls, my life had transformed into something unrecognizable. True to his word, Dominic had arranged security. A rotation of 3 men in dark suits took turns watching my building, following me to school, sitting in cars outside while I taught. At first, their presence terrified me. A constant reminder that I needed protection meant I was in actual danger. But after a few days, I found their presence oddly comforting. At least someone was watching my back. Dominic and I fell into a routine. He came by most evenings after work, bringing dinner from restaurants I'd never be able to afford on my salary. We'd sit in my modest apartment, eating expensive Italian food while discussing baby names, nursery colors, and the mundane details of my prenatal care. In those moments, it was easy to forget the darkness that surrounded his world. He accompanied me to my 16-week appointment, and I watched his face transform when he heard the heartbeat for the first time. The strong, steady thump filled the examination room, and tears streamed down his face without shame. He gripped my hand so tightly it almost hurt, but I didn't mind. In that moment, he wasn't a dangerous businessman with mob connections. He was just a man overwhelmed by the miracle of impending fatherhood. "That's our baby," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "That's really our baby." The doctor smiled at us, probably used to seeing fathers react this way, but I knew it meant something different for Dominic. This baby represented possibility, a chance to build something good in a life that had been defined by his family's dark legacy. However, not everything was smooth. At school, I noticed changes. Parents who'd always been friendly started giving me odd looks. One mother, whose husband apparently worked in city government, pulled me aside one morning. "Miss Thompson, is everything all right? I heard some concerning rumors about associations you might have." Her voice was polite but laced with judgment. "I don't know what you mean," I said carefully. "Just be careful, dear. The company you keep reflects on the school, and on you." After she left, I felt sick. Dominic's world was bleeding into mine, tainting the life I'd carefully built. Mrs. Henderson noticed my distress and called me into her office during lunch. "Emma, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." She closed the door, her expression concerned. "Are you in some kind of trouble? Because there have been some unusual people asking questions about you. And that man who picks you up sometimes, I recognize him from the news. He's connected to some very powerful people." I sank into a chair, exhausted from keeping secrets. "I'm not in trouble. At least not the kind you're thinking. Dominic is the father of my baby. He's trying to be supportive, but his family is complicated." Mrs. Henderson studied me for a long moment. "Complicated is one word for it. Emma, I'm not going to judge you, but I need to know, is this school safe? Are my students safe?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Dominic would never let anything happen here. The security he's provided is as much to make sure nothing spills over into my workplace as it is to protect me." She nodded slowly. "Okay, I trust you. But Emma, if that changes, if you feel unsafe for even a moment, you tell me immediately. We'll figure something out." That conversation weighed on me. I was bringing danger to people I cared about, threatening the sanctuary that Lincoln Elementary had always been. That evening, when Dominic came over, I confronted him. People are asking questions. Parents, my principal. Your mother was right. Being with you puts everyone around me at risk. He set down the Chinese food he'd brought, his expression troubled. I know. I'm working on a solution. What kind of solution? My father wants to meet you. He said it quickly, like ripping off a bandage. He's demanded it, actually. Says he won't approve any of my plans to legitimize our business until he's vetted you himself. My blood ran cold. Vetting me? I'm not applying for a job, Dominic. I'm carrying your child. I know. And that's exactly why he wants to meet you. In his world, you're not just my girlfriend. You're potentially the mother of the next Greco heir. That comes with expectations. He took my hands. I'll be with you the whole time. He can be intimidating, but he won't hurt you. He just wants to understand who you are. And if I don't meet his approval? Dominic's jaw tightened. Then he doesn't approve. But it doesn't change anything between us. I've made my choice, Emma. You and our baby come first. The meeting was arranged for Saturday evening at the Greco family estate in Lake Forest. Dominic picked me up in the late afternoon, and I'd never been more nervous. I dressed carefully in a modest navy dress that disguised my small but growing bump, minimal makeup, my hair pulled back in a professional style. I was meeting the head of what might still be a crime family, and I had no idea what to expect. The Greco estate was stunning. A sprawling property with manicured lawns, security gates, and a mansion that looked like something from a movie. As we drove up the circular driveway, I saw several men in dark suits positioned around the property, watching, always watching. Breathe, Dominic said gently, noticing my panic. Just be yourself. That's all you need to be. Inside, the house was elegant but surprisingly warm, filled with family photos and the smell of cooking food. Angela Greco greeted us in the foyer, her expression neutral as her eyes swept over me. Dominic, Miss Thompson, my husband is waiting in his study. She led us through the house, her heels clicking on marble floors. Antonio Greco's study was exactly what I'd imagined. Dark wood paneling, leather furniture, shelves filled with books and expensive liquor. He stood as we entered, a man in his late 60s with Dominic's dark eyes, and a presence that commanded immediate respect and fear in equal measure. So, he said, his voice accented with Italian inflections. This is the teacher who's captured my son's heart. He gestured to a chair. Sit. Let's talk. The next hour was one of the most intense of my life. Antonio asked questions about my background, my family, my education, my plans for the future. He was polite but probing, clearly assessing whether I was suitable for his son. Angela sat silently in the corner, her expression unreadable. My son tells me you don't come from money, Antonio said at one point. That you're a public school teacher. Noble work, but not exactly what I'd envisioned for Dominic's children's mother. With respect, Mr. Greco, I didn't envision any of this either, I said, surprising myself with my directness. But I'm not going to apologize for who I am or what I do. I love teaching. I love helping children, and I'm going to love and raise my child the best way I know how. Something flickered in Antonio's eyes. Respect? Maybe. Or amusement. You have spine? Good. You'll need it in this family. He turned to Dominic. You're sure about this? About leaving the old business behind for her? I'm not leaving for her, Dominic said firmly. I'm leaving because it's the right thing to do. Emma just made the decision easier. Antonio was quiet for a long moment, studying both of us. Finally, he stood and walked to his desk, pulling out an envelope. Very well. If you're determined to go legitimate, I won't stop you. But understand, this changes everything. The protections our old associations provided, the leverage we had, the fear that kept enemies at bay, all of that goes away if we clean up our operations. I understand, Dominic said. Do you? Antonio's voice was sharp. Because there are people who won't be happy about this. People who see our families shift as weakness, as an opportunity. They might try to take advantage. They might come after the things you care about. His eyes moved to me, the implication clear. Then we'll deal with them, Dominic said, his voice steady. Together, Antonio handed him the envelope. These are documents transferring the legitimate holdings to your name exclusively. The other operations, the ones we're shutting down, I'll handle the transitions. But Emma needs to understand something. He looked at me directly. You're not just dating my son. You're not just having his baby. You're becoming part of a family with a very specific history. People will judge you, fear you, or try to use you because of our name. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the suspicious parents at school, the guards outside my building, Angela's warnings. I thought about my quiet, safe life that had been turned upside down. Then I thought about Dominic's hand in mine, the sound of our baby's heartbeat, the possibility of a future together. I'm prepared to try, I said quietly. For my child. For Dominic. I'm prepared to try. Antonio nodded slowly. Then welcome to the family, Emma Thompson. May God help us all. Dinner that followed was surprisingly pleasant. Angela thawed slightly, asking about my pregnancy, sharing stories about when she'd been expecting Dominic. I learned about his childhood, his rebellious teenage years, his slow realization that he wanted something different than what his family offered. As we were leaving, Angela pulled me aside. I was harsh when we first met. I apologize for that. I was trying to protect you in the only way I knew how. She touched my hand gently. But I see now that you're stronger than I gave you credit for. You'll need that strength. The path ahead won't be easy. I'm beginning to understand that, I said. Good. Then understand this too. I may have doubts about this choice, but that baby you're carrying is my grandchild, and I protect what's mine. If you need anything, you call me. Family takes care of family. On the drive home, I felt emotionally exhausted but oddly hopeful. That went better than I expected. My father respects honesty and courage. You showed both. Dominic reached over and took my hand. Emma, I know this has been overwhelming, but I promise you, we're going to build something good, something clean. Our child won't grow up in the shadows. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But as we drove through the dark Chicago streets, passing by warehouses and industrial buildings that might or might not still be part of illegal operations, I couldn't shake the feeling that leaving the shadows was going to be harder than anyone anticipated. My intuition proved correct 3 days later. I was at school, teaching my afternoon class about sentence structure, when the fire alarm went off. It wasn't a scheduled drill, and the sudden blaring made everyone jump. We filed out according to protocol, my students in a neat line, other classes streaming out behind us. That's when I saw the smoke. It was coming from the school's office wing, thick black smoke billowing from broken windows. Fire trucks were already arriving, but my first thought was for the school records, the files, everything that made Lincoln Elementary function. Then I saw the message. Someone had spray painted across the side of the building, visible to everyone gathered on the front lawn. Greco horror. This is just the beginning. My blood turned to ice. The other teachers were staring at the message, at me, connecting dots they'd only suspected before. Students were asking questions, parents pulling up and seeing the vandalism, and suddenly every eye was on me. Mrs. Henderson rushed over, her face pale. Emma, get in my car. Now. I didn't argue. She drove me away from the chaos, away from the accusing stares and whispered conversations. When we were several blocks away, she pulled over. This is what I was afraid of, she said quietly. "Emma, I believe you when you say you're not involved in anything illegal. But your association with Dominic is putting the school at risk. The board is going to want answers. Parents are going to demand action." She looked at me with genuine sadness. "I think you need to consider taking a leave of absence, at least until this situation is resolved." "You're suspending me?" I felt tears start to fall. "I'm trying to protect you and the school. This is temporary, just until things calm down. You'll keep your benefits, your position will be waiting. But right now, you being here is dangerous for everyone." She drove me home, and I climbed the stairs to my apartment in a daze. The security guard stationed outside my building, a different one than usual, gave me a concerned look, but said nothing. Inside, I finally let myself break down. I called Dominic, sobbing so hard I could barely speak. He was there in 20 minutes, holding me while I cried out all the fear and frustration and grief of losing the job I loved because of circumstances beyond my control. "I'm so sorry," he kept saying. "God, Emma, I'm so sorry. I should have protected you better. I should have seen this coming." "Who did this?" I demanded. "Who would target a school?" His expression went dark, dangerous. "I have my suspicions. There are families who aren't happy about our shift toward legitimacy. They see it as weakness, as betrayal. This is them testing me, seeing if I'll retaliate the old way." "And will you?" He was quiet for a long time. "I want to. Every instinct is screaming at me to make them pay for threatening you, for putting those kids at risk. But that's exactly what they want. For me to prove I'm still the same as them, still willing to use violence and intimidation." He cupped my face in his hands. "So no, I'm going to handle this the legal way. Police reports, lawyers, security improvements. I'm going to prove we're different now." "And if the legal way doesn't work?" His eyes were hard, uncompromising. "Then I'll do whatever it takes to keep you and our baby safe, legal or not." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the spray-painted words, about my students who'd witnessed it, about the life I was being forced to leave behind. At some point Dominic's phone rang, and he stepped into the kitchen to take the call, speaking in low, urgent Italian. When he came back, his face was grim. "That was one of my security team. The fire at your school. It wasn't random vandalism. Someone planted an accelerant. This was deliberate, calculated arson." Oh God. I felt sick. They could have killed someone. There were hundreds of children in that building. "I know. Which is why I'm moving you out of this apartment. Tonight." "What? No. I'm not letting them drive me out of my home." "Emma, please." His voice cracked with desperation. "They know where you live. They proved today they're willing to escalate. I have a safe place, a penthouse with security that can't be breached, just until we figure out who's behind this and neutralize the threat." "Neutralize the threat? You sound like you're planning a military operation." "In a way, I am. This is war, Emma. And you and our baby are the most valuable targets on the board. I won't lose you. I can't." In the end, I agreed. What choice did I have? My school had been attacked because of me. My students had been put in danger because someone wanted to send Dominic a message. Staying in my apartment meant maintaining the illusion of normalcy, when nothing about this situation was normal anymore. We packed my essentials quickly. Clothes, toiletries, the ultrasound pictures I kept on my nightstand, books to keep me occupied during my forced leave of absence. As we carried boxes down to Dominic's car, I looked back at my building, wondering if I'd ever feel safe enough to return. The penthouse was in a luxury high-rise downtown, the kind of place I'd only seen in magazines. The security was indeed impressive. Doorman, key cards, cameras everywhere, guards patrolling the building. The apartment itself was beautiful but cold, all modern lines and expensive furniture, nothing personal or warm. "We'll make it home," Dominic promised, seeing my expression. "Bring whatever you need, decorate however you want. This is your space now, too." As I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the glittering Chicago skyline, I placed my hand on my growing belly. My baby kicked for the first time then, a tiny flutter that made me gasp. "What is it?" Dominic was at my side instantly, concerned. "The baby." I felt the baby move. I guided his hand to where mine had been, and we stood together waiting. After a moment, there it was again. A small but definite flutter against his palm. His face transformed. Wonder replacing the stress and anger that had defined the past few days. "That's incredible. That's our baby, Emma. Our baby is saying hello." In that moment, despite everything, the danger, the upheaval, the uncertainty, I felt a surge of fierce determination. This child was worth fighting for. This future we were trying to build was worth the risk. Whatever came next, whatever enemies Dominic's family had made, whatever dangers lurked in the transition from criminal empire to legitimate business, we would face it together. We had to. Because now, there was no going back. Living in Dominic's penthouse was like existing in a gilded cage. Everything was beautiful, comfortable, and secure. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being trapped. The security measures that had seemed excessive before now felt necessary but suffocating. I couldn't leave without an escort. I couldn't go anywhere without careful planning and risk assessment. My life had been reduced to the confines of luxury high-rise walls. The days blended together. I tried to maintain some semblance of routine. Reading, preparing lesson plans for when I could return to teaching, researching everything about pregnancy and newborn care. Dominic came home most evenings, usually late, always exhausted, his face drawn with the stress of transitioning the family business while dealing with increasing threats. "Another warehouse was vandalized," he told me one night, loosening his tie as he collapsed onto the couch beside me. "Third one this month. Whoever's orchestrating this is systematic, trying to cripple our legitimate operations while I'm trying to build them up." "Do you know who it is?" I asked, rubbing his shoulders, feeling the tension knotted there. "I have suspicions. The Rossini family has been making moves, trying to take over territory we're vacating as we go legitimate. They see our shift as weakness, as an opportunity to expand their own operations." His voice was bitter. Apparently, choosing to be a better person makes you a target. I was 20 weeks along now, visibly pregnant, my body changing in ways that were both miraculous and terrifying. We'd had another ultrasound. A girl, the doctor told us, and Dominic had cried again, overwhelmed with joy and fear in equal measure. We were having a daughter, a little girl who would inherit both his name and all the complications that came with it. "We need to think about names," I said, trying to lighten the mood. "We can't just keep calling her the baby." He managed to smile. "I've been thinking about that. What about Sophia? It was my grandmother's name. The woman who taught me that family could be about love instead of just power. Sophia." I tested it on my tongue, imagining calling it across a playground, whispering it over a crib. "Sophia Rose Thompson Greco. I like it." "Thompson Greco?" He raised an eyebrow. "Unless you have a problem with my name being part of hers?" I challenged. No, I love it. She should carry both our legacies, the good parts anyway." He placed his hand on my belly, and Sophia kicked immediately, as if acknowledging her father. "I promise you, little one, you're going to have a better life than I did, cleaner, safer." But the threats kept coming. Anonymous calls to Dominic's business line, suspicious packages left at properties he managed, graffiti appearing on buildings faster than it could be removed. Each incident was calculated, designed to create fear and instability without crossing into violence that would trigger a full police investigation. Then, 3 days before Christmas, everything escalated. I was in the penthouse alone. Dominic had gone to a business meeting that morning when someone knocked on the door. Not the intercom from the lobby, but directly on the penthouse door. The security system should have made that impossible. I approached cautiously, checking the peephole. A man stood there, older, well-dressed, someone I didn't recognize. But something about his posture, the way he waited patiently, suggested he knew I was watching. "Mrs. Greco?" His voice was polite, cultured. Or should I say Miss Thompson? "We haven't met, but I'm a friend of the family. I need to speak with you about Dominic." Every instinct screamed danger. "How did you get up here?" "I have friends in this building. It wasn't difficult. Please, I just want to talk. 5 minutes of your time could save a lot of trouble for everyone involved." Against my better judgment, I opened the door, keeping the chain locked. "Say what you need to say from there." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "My name is Marco Rossini. I believe you've heard of my family." My blood ran cold. This was the enemy, the one orchestrating the attacks against Dominic's properties. "What do you want?" "To deliver a message. Your boyfriend is making a mistake, trying to go legitimate. He thinks he can just abandon his family's obligations, our agreements, our shared history. But business doesn't work that way. There are consequences for betrayal." "He's not betraying anyone. He's trying to build something better." "Better for whom? Not for the families who've relied on the Grecos for decades. Not for the people whose livelihoods depend on our networks. Dominic's idealism is going to destroy more than just his own empire." Marco's expression hardened. "So I'm asking you, as a reasonable woman who surely doesn't want her child born into a war, convince him to reconsider, convince him to honor his father's commitments." "Or what?" I challenged, though my voice shook. "Or the attacks get worse, much worse, and we stop being careful about collateral damage." His eyes dropped pointedly to my pregnant belly. "That would be tragic, don't you think? A young mother and her unborn child caught in crossfire that could have been avoided." Before I could respond, the elevator dinged, and Dominic's voice called out. "Emma?" Marco's eyes never left mine. "Think about what I said. You have influence over him. Use it wisely." Then he turned and walked calmly toward the fire stairs, disappearing before Dominic reached the door. I stood frozen, my hands protectively over my stomach. When Dominic saw my face, he immediately went on alert. "What happened? What's wrong?" I told him everything, watching his expression darken with each word. By the time I finished, his hands were clenched into fists, his jaw tight with barely controlled rage. "He came here. To our home. He threatened you and Sophia." His voice was dangerously quiet. "That changes everything." "Dominic, what are you going to do?" He pulled out his phone, making a series of calls in rapid Italian. I caught fragments. Increased security, track him down, every available resource. When he finally hung up, he turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before, something cold and ruthless that reminded me exactly whose son he was. I tried to do this the right way. I tried to walk away from violence, from the old methods. But they won't let me. They keep pushing, keep threatening, and now they've crossed a line I can't ignore. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. "I'm going to end this, tonight, one way or another." "What does that mean?" I was terrified by the resolve in his voice. "It means I'm calling a meeting, all the families, and I'm going to make it clear that threatening you and Sophia is not negotiable. That anyone who continues this campaign will face consequences they won't like." That sounds like a threat. It is. But it's also an opportunity for peace. For them to accept the new reality or face war with a family that still remembers how to fight. He kissed my forehead. "Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone. I'll have 3 guards posted outside, people I trust with my life. This ends tonight." After he left, I paced the penthouse, unable to settle. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago glittered in the winter darkness, oblivious to the drama playing out in its shadows. I thought about calling my parents in Florida, warning them that things might get dangerous. But what would I say? That their daughter was caught in a mob war because she'd gotten pregnant by the wrong man? Hours passed. Midnight came and went. I dozed on the couch, exhausted but unable to sleep properly. Every sound made me jump. Every creak of the building sent my heart racing. At 3 a.m, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Emma." Angela Greco's voice was tight with controlled panic. "You need to get to Rush University Medical Center. There's been an incident. He's hurt." The world tilted. "How bad?" "Bad enough. Just get here. I'll have a car waiting downstairs." The drive to the hospital was a blur. The guards who'd been posted outside my door came with me, flanking me protectively as we rushed through emergency room doors. Angela was waiting, her usually impeccable appearance disheveled, her eyes red from crying. "What happened?" I demanded. The meeting went badly. Rossini had brought men, more than we anticipated. There was shooting. Dominic got hit trying to get to his car. Her voice cracked. "He's in surgery now. They don't know yet if... They just don't know." I sank into a waiting room chair, my hands on my belly, trying to breathe through the panic. This couldn't be happening. Dominic couldn't die. Not now. Not when we were finally building something. Not when Sophia needed her father. Antonio Greco arrived shortly after, and I'd never seen the powerful man look so diminished. His face was gray, aged years in a single night. He sat beside his wife, taking her hand, and for the first time I saw them not as mob royalty, but as parents terrified of losing their child. "This is my fault," Antonio said quietly. "I should have handled Rossini myself. Should have dealt with this before it touched Dominic, before it touched you." He looked at me with genuine remorse. "I'm sorry, Emma, for all of this. You didn't deserve to be dragged into our world." "I made my choice," I said, though my voice shook. "I chose Dominic. I chose this life. I just need him to survive so we can live it." Hours crawled by. Dawn broke over Chicago, pale winter light streaming through hospital windows. Angela went to get coffee. Antonio made calls, his voice sharp as he barked orders about retaliation and security. I just sat, praying to a God I wasn't sure I believed in, making desperate bargains about all the things I'd do if Dominic survived. Finally, a surgeon emerged, still in his scrubs. We all stood, holding our breath. "He's stable," the doctor said, and I felt my knees nearly give out. The bullet hit his shoulder, missed anything vital. He lost a lot of blood, but he's going to recover. You can see him in about an hour, once we get him settled in a room. The relief was overwhelming. Angela actually hugged me, something she'd never done before, both of us crying with the release of tension. Antonio's shoulders sagged, and he suddenly looked his age, exhausted and grateful. When they finally let me see him, Dominic was pale, hooked up to various monitors and IVs, but his eyes were open. He managed a weak smile when I entered. "Hey," he rasped. "Sorry for scaring you." I burst into tears, carefully sitting on the edge of his bed, mindful of his injuries. "You almost died. You almost left me alone to raise Sophia by myself. I know. I'm sorry." He lifted his uninjured arm to wipe my tears. "But Emma, it's over. The meeting, it didn't go how I planned, obviously. But before Rossini's men started shooting, I made it clear that you and Sophia are untouchable, that anyone who comes after my family will face not just me, but every resource the Grecos have ever built. His expression hardened. And after tonight, after what they did, even the families who were on the fence about my legitimacy plans have lined up behind me. No one wants the kind of war this could become. So what happens now? Now we rebuild. Really rebuild. Rossini is facing attempted murder charges. There were dozens of witnesses. His organization is going to collapse under the legal pressure. And I have commitments from the other families that they'll stay out of our territory while we complete the transition. He touched my face gently. We won, Emma. Maybe not the way I wanted, but we won. We get our future. We get to raise Sophia in peace. I wanted to believe him. As I sat there holding his hand, feeling our daughter move inside me, I let myself imagine that future. A life where Dominic came home every night without looking over his shoulder. Where Sophia could grow up knowing her father wasn't involved in anything dark or dangerous. Where I could return to teaching without fear of bringing danger to my students. Maybe it was naive. Maybe there would always be ghosts from the Greco family's past. Always be people who remembered what they used to be. But sitting there in that hospital room, watching Dominic's chest rise and fall with steady breaths, I chose to hope. We'd survive the worst. Surely we could handle whatever came next. Dominic came home from the hospital 3 days after Christmas, his arm in a sling, moving carefully but determined to recover quickly. The penthouse had been transformed in his absence. Angela and I had worked together, awkwardly at first, then with growing warmth, to make it feel less like a showroom and more like a home. There were photos now, comfortable throws on the furniture, and we'd set up the beginning of a nursery in one of the spare bedrooms. You did all this? Dominic asked, looking around with wonder. We need a home, not just a safe house, I said. If we're really starting over, we should start properly. The new year brought changes. Marco Rossini and 3 of his lieutenants were indicted on multiple charges, including attempted murder, racketeering, and arson at Lincoln Elementary. The evidence was overwhelming, collected over months by law enforcement who'd been building a case. Dominic's shooting had given them the final piece they needed. With Rossini's organization in chaos, the pressure on us eased. The threats stopped. The vandalism ended. For the first time in months, I could breathe without constantly looking over my shoulder. Mrs. Henderson called in January, her voice warm. Emma, the school has been repaired. We'd love to have you back if you're ready. Though I understand if you want to wait until after the baby comes. I thought about it carefully. I was 26 weeks along now, visibly pregnant. And while I felt good, the idea of returning to work, while still dealing with the aftermath of everything, felt overwhelming. Would it be possible to take maternity leave a bit early? I could come back in the fall, help with the new school year. Of course, dear. Your position will be waiting. You're one of our best teachers. We're not letting you go that easily. The relief of knowing I had a job to return to, a life beyond being Dominic Greco's girlfriend, was immense. I loved him. Loved the life we were building. But I also needed to be Emma Thompson, the teacher who helped kids discover their love of reading, who made a difference in small but meaningful ways. Dominic's recovery progressed well. His shoulder healed, and with it came a new determination to complete the business transition. He worked with lawyers and accountants, systematically divesting from anything questionable, investing in legitimate ventures, real estate development, restaurants, import-export businesses that operated completely above board. His father, surprisingly, supported the changes. The shooting had shaken Antonio, forced him to confront what his legacy had become. I built an empire, he told us one Sunday dinner at the family estate. But I also built a prison. For myself, for my family. Maybe it's time to let it go. Angela, too, had softened. She came by the penthouse regularly, bringing baby clothes and offering advice about pregnancy and motherhood. "I was too harsh with you at first," she admitted one afternoon as we assembled the crib together. "I was trying to protect Dominic the only way I knew how. But you've been good for him. You've given him something to fight for that isn't about power or territory." "He's been good for me too," I said honestly. "I was living a safe, small life. He's shown me I'm capable of more than I thought." By March, I was 34 weeks along, huge and uncomfortable but glowing according to everyone who saw me. Dominic had become obsessively protective, barely letting me lift anything heavier than a book, insisting I rest constantly, attending every single prenatal appointment with detailed lists of questions for the doctor. "I'm pregnant, not dying," I teased him one evening as he fussed over whether I was comfortable enough on the couch. "I know. But I almost lost you. I almost lost both of you." His hand spread across my belly, feeling Sophia's movements. "I'm allowed to be careful with what matters most." We took childbirth classes together, the only couple there where the father showed up in a designer suit having come directly from business meetings. The other couples would whisper, clearly recognizing Dominic's name, but we ignored them. This was our moment, our preparation for becoming parents. Sophia Rose Thompson Greco arrived on April 15th at 6 in the morning, after 14 hours of labor that Dominic never left my side for. He held my hand, wiped my forehead, encouraged me through every contraction, and when they finally placed our daughter in my arms, his tears fell freely. She was perfect. 7 pounds, 3 ounces of absolute perfection, with dark hair like her father and my nose, her tiny fist immediately curling around Dominic's finger like she knew exactly who he was. "She's beautiful," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "She's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "We made her," I said, still overwhelmed by what we'd just accomplished. "We made this perfect person." The next few weeks were an exhausting blur of feeding schedules, diaper changes, and learning to function on almost no sleep. But they were also the happiest weeks of my life. Watching Dominic with Sophia was a revelation. This powerful, sometimes dangerous man reduced to tears by a baby's smile, pacing the floor at 3 in the morning, singing Italian lullabies his grandmother had taught him, changing diapers with the same focused intensity he brought to business deals. Angela and Antonio were devoted grandparents, visiting often, helping when we needed it, marveling over every tiny development. "She has your eyes, Emma," Angela said one afternoon, holding Sophia with practiced ease. But Dominic's stubborn determination. Poor thing didn't stand a chance. She's going to be a force of nature. When Sophia was 6 weeks old, Dominic insisted on doing something he'd been planning for months. He arranged a small ceremony in the penthouse with just family and a few close friends. Father Michael, the priest who'd known the Greco family for decades, came to bless our daughter and, to my surprise, to marry us. "You want to get married? Now?" I asked when Dominic showed me the marriage license he'd obtained. "I wanted to ask properly, with a ring and flowers and all the romance you deserve. But Emma, I can't wait anymore. I want Sophia to grow up seeing her parents committed to each other. I want you to be my wife, legally and officially. I want the world to know you're mine and I'm yours." He pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "Will you marry me? Will you take a chance on a reformed crime boss who loves you more than he ever thought possible?" I laughed through tears. "You're impossible." And yes, of course, yes. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. I wore a cream dress Angela had helped me pick out, held Sophia in one arm while Dominic held my other hand, and made vows about love and partnership and building a future together. When Father Michael pronounced us husband and wife, Dominic kissed me with all the passion and promise of that first night we'd met, and I knew without doubt that this was exactly where I was meant to be. Life settled into a new rhythm. I returned to teaching that fall, juggling lesson plans with motherhood, grateful for Angela's help with childcare and Dominic's flexibility in his schedule. The school welcomed me back warmly, and while there were still whispers about my mob connections, they faded over time as people saw I was just Emma Thompson, beloved teacher who happened to have married into a complicated family. Dominic's business transformation continued. Greco Holdings became known as one of Chicago's most ethical development companies, creating affordable housing projects and investing in struggling neighborhoods. It was slower, less profitable than the old ways, but Dominic was building something he could be proud of, something Sophia could inherit without shame. We moved out of the penthouse when Sophia turned 1, buying a house in Lincoln Park with a yard and good schools nearby. It wasn't as secure as the high-rise, but by then, we didn't need fortress-level security. The threats had ended. The Greco name was being rehabilitated. We were just another family in Chicago, albeit one with an interesting past. On Sophia's 2nd birthday, the extended family gathered at our house for a party. My parents had flown in from Florida, charmed despite their initial reservations by their granddaughter and by Dominic's obvious devotion to his family. Angela and Antonio were there, along with Dominic's cousins, and the few family friends who'd survived the transition away from criminal enterprise. As I watched Sophia toddle around the yard, chasing bubbles and laughing with pure joy, Dominic came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Happy?" he asked. I leaned back against him. "Incredibly. Are you?" I never thought I could be this happy. Never thought I deserved it. He turned me to face him. "You saved me, Emma. You and Sophia. You gave me a reason to be better, to want better." "We saved each other," I corrected. "I was playing it safe, hiding from life. You showed me I could be brave, that I could handle more than I thought." He kissed me softly. "Think we could handle one more?" I pulled back, searching his face. "Are you asking if I want another baby?" "Maybe, someday, when you're ready. I like the idea of Sophia having a sibling, of growing our family." He smiled. "Besides, I'm getting good at the whole father thing." I laughed. "You really are. Okay, someday. Let's see how we handle the terrible twos first." As the party continued around us, I thought about how far we'd come. From a one-night stand in a hotel bar to this, a marriage, a daughter, a life built on love and second chances. It hadn't been easy. We'd faced danger, judgment, and our own doubts. But we'd survived. We'd chosen each other, again and again, through every challenge. That night, after everyone had left and Sophia was asleep, Dominic and I sat in our living room, my head on his shoulder, his hand in mine. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "Choosing this life over the one your family expected?" "Never. Not for a second." He kissed the top of my head. "I chose love over power. I chose you and Sophia over an empire built on fear. That's not a sacrifice. That's the best decision I ever made." I looked around our home, at the photos on the walls showing our journey from that first ultrasound to Sophia's birthday party, at the toys scattered across the floor, at the life we'd built from an impossible beginning. "I love you, Dominic Greco," I said quietly. "I love you too, Emma Thompson Greco. Always and forever." And in that moment, I knew without doubt that our story, which had started with secrets and danger and uncertainty, had found its happy ending. Not because everything was perfect, but because we'd chosen to face imperfection together. We'd built something real, something lasting, something worth fighting for. We'd built a family, and that was the greatest triumph of all.